Have you ever been told to stay away from cheese, butter, or milk because they'll send your cholesterol skyrocketing and put your heart at risk? Or maybe you've read headlines shouting that dairy is the hidden culprit behind clogged arteries. But here's the shocking question I want you to sit with for just a moment. What if the truth about dairy and cholesterol is not as simple as good or bad? What if what we've been taught for decades has been missing an important layer of understanding? And by clinging to old fears, many of us might actually be losing out on foods that could still have a place in a healthy life after 50. That's what I want to talk about with you today. The complicated but fascinating link between dairy and cholesterol, and what you really need to know if you care about your heart, your longevity, and your enjoyment of food. When I was younger, I remember my own father pushing away a plate of scrambled eggs cooked in butter, muttering, "Doctor says it'll clog my arteries." He replaced whole milk with skim, gave up his favorite cheddar cheese, and looked miserable every time family pizza night came around. And you know what? Despite all his sacrifices, his cholesterol still climbed over the years. That stuck with me because it made me realize avoiding foods you love doesn't automatically guarantee better health. Sometimes the story is far more nuanced. And dairy, my friend, is one of those stories. Let's start with the basics. Cholesterol itself. Most people hear cholesterol and immediately think bad. But cholesterol is not your enemy. It's a type of fat that your body actually needs to survive. It helps build hormones, keeps your cells flexible, and even assists with brain function. The problem comes when cholesterol particles, particularly LDL, often labeled the bad cholesterol, get too high and start building up in artery walls. That buildup is what can increase the risk of heart disease. Now, dairy comes into play because for decades, we were told that foods high in saturated fat like butter, cheese, cream, and whole milk raise LDL cholesterol. And that's true, but only part of the picture. Here's where it gets interesting. Not all saturated fat behaves the same way in the body, and not all dairy products affect cholesterol equally. For example, studies have found that cheese doesn't raise cholesterol as much as butter does, even when the fat content is similar. Why? Scientists believe it has to do with the dairy matrix, the combination of nutrients, proteins, and how they interact in your body. That means the health impact of eating cheese is not identical to spreading butter on toast, even though both come from milk. That nuance matters, especially for those of us over 50 who have been living under the shadow of dietary warnings for decades. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever cut dairy completely, only to notice your cholesterol barely budged? If that's you, you're not alone. I've spoken to so many people in our age group who feel frustrated because they gave up foods they loved only to realize the payoff wasn't what they expected. That's because cholesterol levels are influenced not just by what we eat, but also by genetics, exercise, weight, stress, and even sleep. In fact, for some people, diet has only a modest effect compared to those other factors. So when you blame dairy alone, you might be oversimplifying a complex picture. That doesn't mean you should ignore what you eat, but it does mean you can make smarter, more flexible choices without living in constant fear of every piece of cheese. Another fascinating twist is that dairy doesn't just contain saturated fat. It also provides protein, calcium, vitamin D, and in fermented forms like yogurt or kefir, probiotics that support gut health. And you know what's surprising? Some research suggests that fermented dairy may even lower the risk of heart disease despite its fat content. That's right, yogurt and kefir might actually be protective. Isn't it ironic that for so long we demonized all dairy, yet now we're learning certain dairy products could be allies for our health? Let me share a personal reflection. I used to drink my coffee black because I believed adding cream was practically pouring heart trouble into my cup. Then in my mid-50s, I started experimenting with small amounts of full-fat Greek yogurt and a splash of half and half in my coffee again. I monitored my cholesterol numbers, expecting a rise, but to my surprise, my HDL, the so-called good cholesterol, actually went up. And HDL is critical because it helps remove excess cholesterol from the bloodstream. That taught me something powerful. Balance, not fear, is the key. Now let's be real here. Not all dairy choices are equal. If you're eating massive amounts of ice cream or loading up on heavily processed cheese products, that's not doing your heart any favors. but choosing moderate portions of natural cheese, plain yogurt, or even the occasional glass of milk can fit into a heart-conscious lifestyle, especially if you balance it with vegetables, whole grains, and healthy fats like olive oil or nuts. If you're nodding along right now because you've struggled with knowing what to eat, I'd love for you to drop a comment below and share your story. It helps not only me, but everyone else watching to realize we're not alone in this confusing journey of food and health. Another thing worth discussing is how dairy interacts with cholesterol-lowering medications. Many of us over 50 are either on statins or at least have been advised to consider them. Did you know that eating some dairy, especially yogurt, can actually help ease the digestive side effects of certain medications? That's another reminder that food is not just fuel, it's medicine in its own right. But I also want to challenge you to think beyond cholesterol numbers. We often get so obsessed with lowering LDL that we forget the bigger picture: reducing inflammation, maintaining healthy blood pressure, keeping blood sugar stable, and staying active. A person with slightly elevated cholesterol but excellent lifestyle habits may be healthier overall than someone with perfect numbers who never moves their body or lives under chronic stress. That's why I believe the conversation around dairy and cholesterol has to shift. Instead of treating dairy as the villain, we should ask, what role can it play in a balanced life? Can it add joy, nourishment, and variety without sabotaging our health? In many cases, the answer is yes. And if you're still skeptical, let's look at cultures around the world. The French eat plenty of cheese, yet their rates of heart disease are historically lower than in the US. This phenomenon has been called the French paradox. In parts of Greece, yogurt and feta are daily staples, and people there often live long, vibrant lives. It's not that dairy is magical, but when consumed as part of a wholesome, active lifestyle, it doesn't seem to be the cholesterol bomb we once feared. Of course, the story wouldn't be complete without acknowledging that dairy isn't for everyone. Some people are lactose intolerant, others have allergies, and some simply feel better without it. And that's okay. The key is to listen to your body. If dairy makes you feel bloated, fatigued, or uncomfortable, that's a sign you may need to limit it. But if you tolerate it well, there's no reason to demonize it across the board. Here's my practical advice if you're over 50 and concerned about cholesterol. First, focus on quality. Choose less processed dairy options like natural cheeses, plain yogurts, or milk without added sugars. Second, pay attention to portions. You don't need to drown your meals in cheese, but enjoying a slice or two can be perfectly fine. Third, balance dairy with fiber-rich foods, veggies, beans, oats, because fiber helps flush excess cholesterol from your system. And finally, remember that lifestyle habits like walking daily, managing stress, and sleeping well may do more for your cholesterol than cutting out dairy ever could. If this resonates with you, don't forget to hit that subscribe button because I share more conversations like this designed especially for those of us navigating health after 50. And let me tell you, it feels so much better to make choices based on empowerment instead of fear. Now, I want to leave you with one last thought, and this might just flip the whole conversation on its head. For years, we've been told that cholesterol numbers are the ultimate measure of heart health. But what if the real key is not simply lowering cholesterol at all costs, but creating a life where food brings joy, energy, and balance? What if enjoying a piece of cheese with friends or savoring a creamy yogurt in the morning is part of what keeps us healthier, not just physically, but emotionally and socially too? That's the twist I want you to consider. The healthiest choice is not always the most restrictive one. Sometimes it's the one that lets you thrive, body and soul. So next time you reach for a slice of cheese or pour a little milk into your coffee, don't think of it as a guilty pleasure. Think of it as part of your ongoing journey toward balance. Because at this stage of life, we're not just surviving, we're learning how to live fully, with wisdom guiding our decisions, not fear. And if you've ever wrestled with that guilt over dairy, I hope today's conversation helps you breathe a little easier and enjoy your food again. Now I'd love to hear from you. Do you still eat dairy? Have you noticed it affects your cholesterol? Share your experience in the comments. And don't forget, if this video gave you a fresh perspective, hit like, subscribe, and share it with someone who might need this encouragement today. Together, let's rewrite the story of food and health after 50, not as a tale of restriction, but as one of freedom, balance, and joy.